Aloha, my name is Genshu Price. I'm from King Intermediate, and I'm joined today with Representative Branco. Nice to meet you, Representative.
Nice to meet you, Genshu.
Now, for my first question, could you please tell us a little bit about the communities in your district?
Absolutely. I have the great pleasure of representing District 50, which is Kailua and Kaneohe Bay. And I'm also very fortunate that my family has lived in this area for 4 generations, actually. My great-grandparents moved here in the early 1950s. Our district, I always say, is very unique because we have several unique factors from our district. One, we affront beautiful Kailua Beach. We have part of awesome Kaneohe Bay, as well as we have the Kainui wetlands areas. So we're very fortunate to have these great ocean resources, water resources in our district.
That's great. And then my next question for you is, since you're new to this legislature, how does it feel to be a part of a new setting? And also, since you came in during such an important time for not only the state or country, but the entire world, how has that affected your outlook on this current session?
Well, first off, it's a great honor to represent my hometown, represent my family, my friends, and so that is just motivating me every day. It is a very different structure. In my previous experience, I was at the federal level, and so state government is very different. So I'm learning every day. I'm moving around. I'm trying to adjust, and I'm just figuring out how it's best to advocate for our community. But I feel very grateful to be here and very honored to be here, especially during this time of COVID. This is not only a crisis for here in Hawaii, it's a crisis for our country as well as worldwide. And so I feel very honored to be part of that, to be able to fight for our community and fight for for Hawaii to make sure that we're getting the proper resources. It's definitely a different time. I was very fortunate to have interned here actually probably over 10 years ago. And so when I was here, there was opening day, there was people coming in, there was constituents coming in talking with you, and basically the Capitol is closed now. There's no constituents coming in. I can communicate them with Zoom and with a phone call, but it's very different than having an in-person conversation. So I do miss that interpersonal touch, but there's an important job, important work we have to do here.
And then you said that you come from Kailua, from your area. Did that in any way motivate you to become a legislator here in Hawaii?
Absolutely. I just feel that Kailua helped raise me, my community helped raise me. I was fortunate to go to Kamehameha schools. I got a great education, I had a great childhood, and I felt it was my time to give back. And that was the big motivation for me to run for office, is I was given all of these great educational opportunities, and now it was my time to make sure the next generation has those opportunities and I can fight for our community.
That's amazing. Now, you were at once a U.S. diplomat. Has that affected your style of your campaign or your outlooks on what you're trying to focus on this session?
Definitely. So I was fortunate that I was a U.S. diplomat before in Colombia, Pakistan, Venezuela, and with the Secretary of State's team. And so my brand of diplomacy I was the guy from Hawaii. And so taking our aloha spirit, taking our culture of Hawaii, and mixing that into diplomacy. And I feel that I do that here in the building. It's a very different sphere, right? Because as a diplomat, your job is to promote the administration's or the executive branch's policies. But here, you have to develop your own policy and advocate for that. But I do believe that my skills as a diplomat has been serving me well, being able to meet with people, to talk with people. For example, I have the representative from Waikiki is a good friend, and him and I don't agree on some policies, but I always make sure to give him the courtesy that I'm going to let him know that I don't agree, and this is what I'm doing, right? And I feel that shows collegiality. And when I was running for office, that was really my brand, right? It wasn't about party, it wasn't right or left, it was about what was the best leadership for our community, and that's why I ran for office.
And now, what is your main focus this session? What are the main parts you want to enhance and just really focus on while you're in office?
Absolutely. Right now, what I'm focusing on is making sure that we have the operating budget and we have the finances to make the state function, as well as making sure resources are given to our working class families. That is most important. The other thing that I'm focusing on, excuse me, do you have a question?
Oh, no, keep going.
Okay. I was just to say, the other thing I'm focusing on is making sure that we're not just thinking of short-term fixes. We're not just looking at the pukas and filling the pukas, but how do we make sure what we're doing now is then feeding into a medium and long-term economy to make sure that we have a strong, diversified state economy.
And then do you have any ideas or plans on how to do such a thing?
Mm-hmm. So right now, what I'm looking at is several measures. For example, is right now, one possible way, right, is a bill that I just actually crossed over into the Senate today, is actually about making sure that our Native Hawaiian artists and Native Hawaiian small businesses who participate in performing arts have the ability to get state funding to make sure that their voices are being heard, but also their businesses continue as well.
That's great. And is there any last words you want to say to your community before we leave?
Just that it's an honor, and I'm very grateful to be representing my community, but I'm also very inspired by you that, I hope to see you in the halls of this building one day, and I really appreciate the hard work that you're doing as well.
Thank you so much for your time, Representative. My name is Genchi Price, and you're watching Youth Capital Commentary.
Aloha, I'm Kailani Bobbis from James Campbell High School, and I'm here with Representative Lisa Kitagawa from District 48. It's a pleasure to be having you today.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to ask you what the communities in your district are like and what it's like being a representative for the state of Hawaii.
Thank you for the question. I really enjoy being a state representative for District 48. It's the area that I grew up in. So I grew up in Kaneohe. I represent the areas of Kaneohe all the way out to Waiahole. So the communities are very different. You have areas that are sort of like town, where there's shopping centers and a lot of businesses, and then the farther out towards the North Shore you go, it's much more country where there's less businesses and less activity. It's a lot more of open spaces and green, beautiful environments. So I have a mixture of different places that I represent.
Thank you for that response. I wanted to ask you, I saw that you opened up the clinic for the homeless on the windward side of Oahu. What changes have you had to make to your facility with the new challenges faced because of COVID?
So the Kaneohe Joint Outreach Center opened a couple of years ago, almost now, about a year and a half. Since COVID has happened, for a little bit, we've had to shut down the clinic because of all of the social distancing and just for safety precautions. Since we've opened again, we have tried to institute all of safety measures to make sure we still serve the community. The numbers, unfortunately, have gone down a little bit since we closed because of the pandemic, but we're hoping to get those numbers back up to help more people out in the community. We also still do, medicine, medical help. We do social service help. And since the pandemic, they've also expanded out to do street medicine. So now instead of just waiting for people to come to the clinic, they're also going out into the community to try to assist people.
Wow, that's so cool. I also saw that you have mobile showers called Revive and Refresh that go around the island, providing hygiene facilities to those unfortunate not able to access those. How has that improved the number of homelessness in Hawaii?
Well, right now, we actually have put a pause on the Revive and Refresh Center at the Kaneohe Joint Outreach Center because the numbers have decreased due to COVID, but we're hoping to bring that back. But when we were having the shower van out there, we saw really great numbers of people utilizing it. And when they utilized it, we could also connect them with other services that the center provides, such as medical services or social services.
Thank you. What do you think the future of Hawaii would look like as we continue to improve and advance the facilities for those without houses?
I think we need to have a lot of different ways to address the homelessness situation and people who are without housing. So the Joint Outreach Center is just one piece of the puzzle. It helps a certain population, but we also need to make sure that we we're creating and expanding other types of social services to meet the needs of the different types of families that may end up, or individuals who may end up being homeless. So I think we need to do a multifaceted approach to address the housing issue and homelessness.
Thank you, Representative Lisa Kitagawa, for taking your time out of your day to talk to us. It was a pleasure having you. This is Kailani Bobis from Youth Capital Commentary.
Hello and aloha. My name is Micah Tutuvanu. I am a current junior at Moanalua High School. And today I'm super stoked to be with Representative Tam, who represents District 22. Thank you, Representative Tam, for taking time out of your day to be with us today.
Thank you, Micah. It's good to be here.
Thank you. So my first question for you today is, what are your goals for the remainder of the session?
Yes. So some of my goals are to pass some good bills that would help our homeless minors get into emergency shelters that they need. Also have noise bills that would help, lower the volume in our district so that, people can go to sleep at night. But my main goal is to continue to serve my community and to help solve some of the small little problems that affect their everyday lives. Whether it's fixing potholes on the road or trying to get more vaccine information or COVID-19 information back to my community. My community is definitely affected by the impacts of coronavirus, and I just want to do everything I can to make sure that, their resources are there to help them and that they can have someone to talk to and hold accountable when things go wrong, when they need help.
That's really interesting, Representative Tam. How would you accomplish these goals?
Accomplishing these goals will take some time. To pass the bills, we need to talk to everyone in this building and to convince them why they're a good idea. In terms of reaching out to my community, I've been doing a good job of that. They've been reaching out to me. And what I found very helpful is just being able to establish that good communication with them, whether it's through an email or a phone call. My community has easy access to me. Most of them have my cell phone number and they call me like that, and I'll be able to answer them. Or when they email out and there's a bigger issue, I was able to get departments to, work with them on them and to solve their problems. So communication will always be key to success.
Representative Tam, can you tell us about the communities in your district, District 22 specifically?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a little biased. I absolutely think my community is the best community. My community is very diverse. We have business owners, we have college students, we have kupuna, we have families, middle class, upper class, we have everyone. And I think that's what makes our community so special. A lot of people can come together, live together, and just be happy. We all are able to help each other when we have needs. And, sometimes it could be disconnected because many of us live in condominiums because it is the most dense district in the entire state, meaning it has a lot of residential towers instead of, single family homes with backyards. But, that closeness brings us together in terms of, we're living closer together. It's a 2-step walk to our neighbor instead of a 2-minute walk to our neighbor. And that's what makes us very special. So I'm really, really privileged and honored to represent District 22, which represents Waikiki and Ala Moana. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank them for giving me this opportunity.
I would like to go to the topic of schooling. Do you have any solutions to kind of increase kids being able to go back to school, and specifically teenagers and high schoolers?
Well, the answer has to be vaccines, vaccines, vaccines. We need to make sure that every single teacher is vaccinated, every single student is vaccinated. The faster we can do that, we can get our schools up and running and have, that sense of community back in our schools again. Right now, there's a lot of misinformation about vaccines out there, such as the vaccine, will hurt you, will do more harm than good. And, that's simply not true. So, my current goal right now is to make sure that everyone knows that this vaccine is safe. And in the meantime, we need to make sure that the proper safety protocols are out there. Everyone still has to wear a mask. Everyone still has to socially distance. And in cases where we can have online learning, we implement that online learning.
Well, thank you for your time, Representative Tam. I would like to give you the floor to, if you would like to say anything to our audience or, the people watching us today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to Olelo, and thank you, Micah, for being here with me and giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Politics is a contact sport. It's not a contact sport, but it's a mind game. Everyone has to be involved. Everyone has to basically step up. Call your legislatures, make sure that your voice is heard, and don't forget to vote in every single election. And I know a lot of young people are watching this, and I encourage you, the minute you turn 18, register to vote, because it's going to be one of the most important decisions of your life.
Well, you heard Representative Tam. My name is Micah Tutuvanu, and you're watching Youth Capital Commentary.
Aloha, my name is Jaylee Kunoy. I'm a 9th grader at Nanakuli High and Intermediate School, and today I'm here with Representative Ryan Yamane from District 37, representing Bililani, Waikele, and Waipio. Aloha, Representative.
Aloha.
Could you share with us today, what are your plans for this 2021 legislative year?
Well, I am the new chairman of the Committee of Health, Human Services, and Homelessness. So one of the major issues that I need to deal with is dealing with the fiscal budget situation and how it impacts our safety net. So I've been going through all the services provided by the Department of Health and Department of Human Services and trying to figure out ways to balance out the budget, ensuring that everyone in our communities are serviced.
Are there any issues in your community that you have faced, and how are you planning on addressing them?
Well, yeah, thank you for the question. So my community, one of the biggest issues is employment. One, having jobs, working. Also, they're worried about things like education, traffic, and crime. But we've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out ways to help diversify our community so that our people can get back to work, get children back into school and moving forward. So we just want to make sure that places are safe, healthy, and that our communities can actually return back to normal as soon as possible. Jaylee, I have a question for you. With this new normal, with education and with COVID impacting schools, how do you think it's going to impact students as they go through high school?
How I think of it is that because of COVID and how we're dealing with going to school online or maybe a limited amount on campus, I feel like our generation will figure out a way. We're going to figure out a way to build up of how we'll get through school. Either we push through more motivation into getting more education that we want, or just finding other ways of how we can make this world better and improving COVID throughout high school. So I know that we missed a lot. I mean, I missed a lot of events in school, so I hope that we'll find a way to do things in that type of way.
That's great. Us leaders want you to know that as we assist and move forward from this, that whatever it takes to help you guys bounce back, to get back into sports, do all these activities, to make sure that your high school experience is special, that we will stand by you and other students and your parents to get that done, because you are our future. And so I just wanted to let you know we make that commitment to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Do you have any last words for your constituents?
Well, I would like to thank everyone in the community of Waikele, Waipio, and Mililani. Our community is based of families, and they work hard and they have children doing like you, working really hard at school, and it's a new normal, right? They have school that are virtual and some of them are coming back to campus. So I just wanted to express to everyone that we are thankful that one, they're doing their best to stay safe, and to have patience as we're going through the vaccination process of getting everyone who wants to be vaccinated, getting that done. And wanted to tell all of you young people, yourself as well, all the way out from wherever you're from, Nanakuli or Waipahu or Milani, that as we do the budget and we go through the legislative process, that we are looking out for you, right? We're trying to balance off everything, making sure that you get the best education in this new environment. So I just want to thank everybody for their patience as we're going through this process.
Mahalo, Representative Yamane, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Mesa Tuzuvanu, and I currently attend Moanalua High School, and I am a senior. I am here with Representative Jeanne Kapela, that represents District 5. It's nice to meet you today. Could you tell us more about the district you represent?
Aloha Mason, and aloha everyone who's watching. My name is Jeanne Kapela, and I am so proud to represent District 5. I was born and raised in District 5. I was born and raised in Captain Cook, actually on a coffee farm. Anyone who knows Kona, and even Ka'u now as well, knows that we are well known, world renowned for our famous Kona coffee, and now famous Ka'u coffee as well. As I said, I was born and raised on a coffee farm, grew up picking coffee, and the district that I represent is very diverse. It takes about 2 hours to drive from one end of the district to the other, and we are located on the west side of Hawai'i Island. So Kona all the way to Ka'u, it encompasses Na'alehu, Ocean View, Captain Cook, Kelikikua, and Kailua Kona. Some of the most beautiful beaches, some of the most incredible fishing places, but one of the things that I love the most about my district is the people. The people of District 5 are incredibly resilient, and I think that that comes from living in a very rural location where we have really just lack of access. We have lack of access to government services, lack of access to affordable housing, lack of access to things like healthcare, mental health care, and then as young women, reproductive health care. So one of the things that I've really tried to do is bring access and bring trust back to my community. I am the first woman, Native Hawaiian, and person born and raised in my community to ever represent it. And I think beyond the resilience in my community, there's also this incredible diversity where you have people of all walks of life, many different socioeconomic backgrounds, many different cultures, and I think it really is a representation, strong representation of what Hawaii looks like as a whole. And unfortunately, we don't have that same diversity in our own state legislature. So I'm a big proponent of representation really does matter. And I'm excited to be a part of a movement for change here in our state and here in the state legislature, where we have leaders who look and act and come from our communities and drink the water from our communities and fight for the change that Hawaii's people deserve.
What are your goals for the remainder of the session?
That's a great question. This is District Week, so we are about 6 weeks into legislative session. All of the bills in the House and the Senate are in their final committees, so they are about to cross over. And if you know anything about the legislative process, you have 2 chambers, and bills go through both chambers, and then from there they cross over, and then they have to go through all the same chambers again and all those different committees before we have conference week. So we are getting close to that midway point, but District Week is when we don't have to be at the state capitol, so I'm actually going back to the district to do a number of different things and to meet with people in person, socially distanced of course, but continue to work closely with my community, because as I said earlier, representation matters, and the best way to represent your community is by being there. So I'm excited to work with our schools, I'm excited to work with our hospitals, and big farming community, so I'm excited to work with our farmers and meet people face to face, and continue to do the work of the people, because I think that that is something that I think for many years it hasn't been done truly, and I really want to support things like a living wage, making sure that Hawaii's people have a living wage, so $17 an hour. And then I also really want to make sure that we can provide things like access to housing and access to healthcare. So those are some of the things that I'm continuing to work on. And then right now we are facing this huge budget shortfall. So I really want to continue to focus on protecting our public workers, specifically and especially our teachers. We all want to see our keiki return back to school, but in order to do that, we have to make sure that our schools are fully funded, that our teachers are giving the respect and protected the way that they deserve, and then also making sure that they feel confident and comfortable going back to their classroom. So that means that we have to fully fund our public schools. So working very hard on that, and as the vice chair for the House Education Committee, I'm excited to do just that.
What is your goals for schooling? Like how seniors is going to graduate? What are you guys going to plan on doing for the seniors this year?
That's a really excellent question. And this morning I was actually tagged in a post where we saw tons and tons of tourists located outside of a hotel. I want to say it was on Maui. And it was so sad to see these people not socially distanced, not wearing masks, gathering in huge numbers when, just like you said, our seniors don't know whether or not they're going to have a graduation, where they're going to be able to walk the line. You don't know if you're going to have prom. You've also been cut out and really cut away from having the opportunity to play sports and connect with your fellow peers. I remember when I was a senior in high school, that was one of the most amazing opportunities, is just to be able to connect, right? We live by making memories. And I really do feel for our high school seniors, just like yourself, Mason, that didn't have that opportunity this year. So for me, one of the things that I've been really focusing on is ensuring that we have tourism on our terms. And that means making sure that we implement things like a green fee, so that when tourists come here, they pay their fair share to be here. I think Hawaii has really catered to the hopes of and the wants of the few and not the many. We've as a state, I feel like we've really focused on corporate interests instead of the needs and the interests of the people. So I really want to change that. And in order to do that, we need to make sure, like I just said in my last answer, we have to make sure that we're funding our schools. We have to make sure that we have tourism on our terms, and that we're putting the needs of Hawaii's people and Hawaii's keiki and Hawaii's students first, not the interests of tourists or the wealthy. So that's what I'm going to continue to work on, because I want to make sure that even if it's socially distanced or via a car, that our seniors have this opportunity to walk the line, to get their diploma, to enjoy their senior year, what's left of it.
Wow, that was very interesting. Do you have anything else to say to the people that's watching right now?
To the people that are watching, please know that my door is always open to you folks. Our legislature, unfortunately, the state capitol building is closed, but we are continuing to do hearings. So you are able to testify virtually, which if you live on a neighbor island like I do, is actually really exciting. You can make a website at the Hawaii State Capitol website. That's capital.hawaii, all spelled out, .gov. And you can testify on any bill that you want to and make your voice heard. At the end of the day, that's what we need if we want change. To the students that are watching, Mason, thank you so much for joining me and allowing me to be interviewed by you. I love what your shirt says, stand for free speech. Every single young individual needs to make sure that their voice is heard. You are our future, and the only way we make changes is by hearing from you. So continue to be the leaders for change, like we see across not just the nation, but across the globe. We have these young people that are fighting for gun control, that are fighting against the climate crisis, that are fighting to end sexual violence. And we need to be able to make sure that that continues. So I know I want to hear from you. I know my colleagues want to hear from you, and we need to make your voices heard. So please continue to fight for the change that you wish to see. And I think overall, we'll have a better Hawaii when more people utilize their voice and make their voices heard. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative, for your time and for me to interview you. I really appreciate it.
Aloha, my name is Genchi Price from King Intermediate School, and I'm joined by Senator Della Cruz. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today, Senator.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I have a few questions for you today. The first one is, could you tell us a little bit about the communities in your district, please?
So I represent Central Oahu, District 22, that's Mililani Mauka, Launani Valley, Waipio Acres, a small portion of Mililani, Wahiwa, Whitmore Village, Helamano, and a small area of Schofield and Wheeler.
Prior to coming into the legislature, you were a part of the Honolulu City Council for 8 years. How did that help you assume your new role as senator?
So in 2002, I ran for the Honolulu City Council, and I spent 8 years there, 2 4-year terms, and I really learned a lot about county issues. You know, we dealt with public safety, infrastructure, zoning, fire and police, garbage service, sanitation, all the day-to-day operations of the city. And those issues are nonpartisan. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, everyone has to flush the toilet, everyone has to walk on the sidewalk, everyone catches the buses. So you just want to make sure that everyone has a decent quality of life, and we try to improve the community as much as possible so that they can be proud of the community that we live in.
You are the youngest chair in council history at age 30. How did it feel to accomplish something so big so soon?
Well, I definitely at the time was the youngest compared to most of my colleagues, and so it was an interesting experience being the leader of people who have been in government for so many different years. But it really forced me to be a quick learner, to understand and listen as much as I could, and understand not just the city and its operations, but the legislative process, making sure that all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, so that we could get the governance of the people of the city and county of Honolulu through as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. And at the same time, when things were not good for our city, making sure that they were deliberately delayed to some extent so that we could get as much input as possible.
And then what are some of the main points that you are focusing on as a senator now in this session?
So right now, because of the COVID pandemic, we've taken a huge financial hit to our state budget. So we're looking at a loss close to $1.5 billion. The governor has talked about furloughs. We still have a huge pandemic. We have, to some extent, a large economic crisis. There's lots of people unemployed. So we're looking at many different ways how we can solve and mitigate a lot of these different problems at the same time. You know, we're hoping that we can get additional funds from the federal government. We're waiting to see what Council of Revenue says in regards to the income the state can expect. We're looking at special funds that we could transfer funds over to the general fund to continue necessary services. And we're also going to have to look at strategic cuts within our budget so that we can trim the fat and making sure that we can do what we can afford.
And then you're currently also a part of many different organizations, such as the, Leeward Community College Culinary Institute Board, along with many other organizations. First of all, why did you decide to become a part of so many, and what are some of their missions and goals for them?
So at the time, the Culinary Institute was very important when I first joined. That's when Hawaii regional cuisine became such a huge part of our culture and things that we promoted as to Hawaii's a place for fine dining, and we tried to really build that pipeline. But the reason why culinary is so important for me is that becomes a stepping point for demanding new agricultural products and creating new products that are value added. I really believe that we need a much more robust and diverse agricultural industry. And if we can get the culinary programs to support that I really believe that was something that needed to be done.
Well, that's great. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to your community before we leave?
Well, you know, we're we're working for you, so we want to make sure that we can do the best job in serving you, not just Central Oahu, but all of the state of Hawaii. We're very proud of people like you who are young leaders and probably will be sitting in my seat sooner rather than later. I think that's awesome what you guys are doing. We're not just proud of you, I think it's very inspiring as well. So keep asking those tough questions of us and let us know how we can also help you guys.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, Senator. My name is Genshi Price from King Intermediate School, and you're watching Youth Capital Commentary.
Aloha, I'm Kaylee Siri, a student at King Intermediate, and today I am here with Representative Ty Cullen, who represents District 39. How are you today, Representative?
I'm doing well, Kaylee. Thank you for asking.
First question for you is, could you just describe your community and your district?
Yes, so District 39 is a very unique district because it encompasses areas of Waipahu, Royal Kunia, Village Park. It also extends to portions of Makakilo, Kapolei, Eva, and West Lock, and some older areas. So it's a blend of a newer community and older community. So we have some of the challenges of like transportation and school capacity, but we also have some exciting areas of a lot of agricultural land. So when everybody talks about food sustainability and resiliency, the district that I have a privilege to represent by the constituents is actually a main player in food production within the state of Hawaii. So it's always very exciting, and I like to share that with whenever I get a chance, because most individuals wouldn't think District 39. Also, what's exciting is all the renewable energy projects that is in the district. So, like I said, it's a blend of new and old, and it's very exciting. So that's District 39 in a nutshell.
So, since you said that it is a very wide variety of different communities, how does COVID affect your district?
Yeah. So COVID affected District 39 in many different ways. First, when it hit last year, it hit the district fairly hard because we did have a lot of working families within especially the tourism-based economy or service industry. And at that time, as things started to close to protect our community during this pandemic, many individuals was left unemployed. So the first impact was financially to our community, and unemployment was starting to tick up. And then we had the school closures. So since we have a community where we have a lot of families, it was impacted because now parents needed to actually change their schedules on actually caring for their families at home, which was an adjustment. So it really turned everything, 180 and dealing with that. And then you had the farming issue. We have agriculture up there within our district. So some of the agricultural practices had to change, and farmers were left with a lot of product because the tourism industry, which they did sell a lot of their products to, or like the open markets that they could get their products to, was closed. So again, that was an impact there as far as movement or getting their products sold in agriculture. That's just a few ways that COVID did impact it. It also impacted it positively, where it did dramatically reduce traffic, as we saw those essential workers that had to go into the field to work. Thank you to all the essential workers, especially the healthcare industry. My sister, who's nurses, and they actually took a lot of time, fighting against COVID and saving lives. So all the individuals who are in the healthcare field, first responders, especially those that we forget about, the supermarket employees, the big box stores, all the small stores that stayed open at that time, they had to, pivot many different ways to protect their employees and stay open for our community. So our community changed with a lot of stores, with a lot of retail, and while continue to protect families.
So, Representative, how did you deal with those problems such as unemployment and school shutdowns?
Yes, so for the school closures, we try to work with the schools and our complex area superintendents to see how we can get the most technology out there to the parents. We noticed that there was a lot of lag in student learning and the ability to use virtual tools, laptops, which made it apparent that many families did not have certain needs. For the unemployment, when unemployment rose in such dramatic rate, it actually impacted our system that was outdated, which we've continuously updated. But you go from minimum unemployment filings to a bunch. So one thing we did in the House of Representatives here is I took time with other legislators to actually volunteer at the unemployment area. We got trained, and we were able to help clear some codes so that we could help constituents or just anybody who was who filed and was needing it to be processed. So I volunteered for several months at the facility to try and help clear some of the names because manpower was really needed. Also for the healthcare workers, we worked with some of the larger farms in the district because PPE, such as masks, sanitizers, was at a shortage. So I was able to work with some of the farmers out there, the large farms, to actually donate some masks. N95 masks was at a prime, and they were able to donate to Polymomi, UH West, and some of the other facilities.
So my next question for you is, what other goals would you like to achieve during your session?
As with all the sessions that I roll into, one of the biggest things I like to fix in the district, because it is seen, it is felt, is always infrastructure. From the first time I was elected until now, I always push infrastructure, especially educational infrastructure. So two areas that did really open up during COVID has been the new ACM building out at UH West Oahu Creative Media Building, which just opened up, and it's going to welcome its students. It's a great facility. Over $37 million was invested that myself and other legislators really supported to do continuing education in the field of creative media. That's an exciting thing that many people will see. We also opened up a new middle school. It's called Ho'opili Middle School in Ho'opili, over $140 million there. And we have many improvements on our roadways, from repaving, and also education in Waipahu High School. A new building is going up. Honowai Elementary, a new building, and other schools got other major improvements during this time. So that's how I continue to work for our community, because to me, next generation, such as yourselves, the students, have a big role to play, and we want you folks in the best facilities so you guys can get best educated.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Representative. Would there be anything you would like to say?
No, I just want to say thank you, Katie, for the interview. Thank you, Olelo, for this opportunity. And to the constituents in District 39, I'm always very humbled for you to allow me to represent you folks in the House of Representatives, the People's House. So I'm always very grateful for that. And from my family to yours, aloha, and stay safe during the pandemic. We are still in it. Mask up.
Thank you so much for your time, Representative. I'm Kaylee Siri from King Intermediate, and this is Youth Capital Commentary.
Aloha, I'm Carl Wiggins from Aliamanu Middle School, and today I'm here with Senator Stanley Chang. How was your day?
Well, great, thanks. Thanks for having me on today, Carl.
Thank you for joining us. So the first question I'll be asking you is, could you tell us a little bit more about the communities in your district?
Sure. My district is District Number 9, East Honolulu, and it stretches from Diamond Head to Hawai'i Kai. So it's mostly residential. It's one of the older communities in the state. A lot of it was developed back in the 50s, 60s, and it's also very stable. We have people living in our district who have been there for multiple generations. We think it's the most beautiful district, certainly on the island, and it's a real honor and pleasure to be able to represent it.
What are your goals for this continuing session?
As the chair of the Senate Committee on Housing, my number one goal is to end the housing shortage in Hawaii. In Hawaii, we've suffered from a housing shortage for decades, generations, and we don't have to. We can build enough housing to meet demand by simply taking existing state-owned lands near the rail stations that are currently being built, building some high-density towers, selling those units with 99-year leases to Hawaii residents who would be owner-occupants and who own no other real property, and to sell those units at cost with no profit and also no taxpayer subsidy, and basically build enough of those units so that everyone who wants one can get one. I think we can sell them for as little as $300,000 a piece. And by doing so, we will ensure that every generation of local people here in Hawaii will be able to call Hawaii home. Unfortunately, this year, we are set to do what we've done for many, many, many years now, which is to produce fewer housing units than we have new babies being born. And so we're effectually telling our young people that they have to leave because we are not building homes for them. And I would like to end that. I would like to change that. And I'd like to ensure that every generation of young people is able to live here in Hawaii.
So about the schools, how do you think that you could better the way that high schoolers and middle schoolers are going to school?
So I think that the key for education is to try to get a mixing of all abilities, of all socioeconomic backgrounds, and to have a really robust school-community relationship. And I've given this some thought because in our Aloha Homes projects, that's what these housing proposals are called, we would want to see elementary schools, preschools, middle schools, high schools all integrated into them so that students would be able to walk to their schools, their faculty would live on site, and it would really create a much better sense of community than what we have now today.
Thank you. Do you have any other final remarks?
Well, I just wanted to say that even though ending the housing shortage isn't easy and it will take time, we do have to start somewhere. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And so I invite anyone watching who has ideas or thoughts or feedback about our housing shortage to contact me at sendchang@capital.hawaii.gov or call our office at 586-8420. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Senator. This is Carl Wiggins, and you're watching Youth Capital Commentary.
Aloha, my name is Amy Ferreira, and I'm a student at Aliamanu Middle School, and I'm here with Representative Lisa Marten from District 51. Thank you for joining us, Representative Marten.
My pleasure to be here.
So my first question is, could you tell us a little bit about the communities in your district?
Yes, I have two communities in my district. It's Waimanalo and Kailua, and both of them are along the ocean and have mountains rising behind, so they are beautiful communities. They're also very attractive to tourists. We have a lot of tourists in addition to the people that live in the community. We've got a whole bunch of different types of people. In Waimanalo, we are blessed to have farmland, which is really special, and also Hawaiian homestead.
What are your goals for the remainder of the session?
Well, I have a lot of goals. It's really busy being a legislator, especially being a new one. So I spend a lot of time learning every day, all day, basically. And there's different things that are my job. One is to just help constituents with everyday issues they have, like to get through state services that they need. So right now, a big one is negotiating unemployment benefits. Another part of my job is work on programs in my community, and a program that's really important to me that I'm working on trying to deal with is homelessness. That's a really big issue for both Kailua and Waimanalo. So I'm working with different agencies and private organizations to find a way that we can help solve that problem. But the other thing I'm doing during session is working on my bills. And right now, I think I have 8 bills that are still alive. And so I am trying to make sure those make it through committees and that they have the best chance of becoming law that they can.
Okay, and could you explain a little bit about the 8 bills you're sending out?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So one of the bills is to do with military land. I have a large military base in my district, and it's ceded land, and the lease may be coming up in a pretty short while, in 2029. And in case there is a change, in case they want to give that land back to the state instead of renewing the lease, we want to make plans and be ready for it. And that's a lot of work to prepare for things like that. You have to clean up the land, and you have to get ready. You need money to accept land. You need to have a plan and funds ready. So that's one bill, is to try to be ready for that and other lands. And then I have several bills that are all focused on environmental issues and energy issues, renewable energy and environmental protection. And I'm the vice chair of energy and environmental protection, so that has been a big focus for me this session.
How has COVID affected your life at home?
Oh, COVID has affected my life a lot. I don't think my life is affected in as terrible a way as some people, right? Nobody in my family has gotten sick or died from COVID, but I have 2 college-age children, and they are not in college. They're back home. One is doing online school, and one of them decided to he's taking just one class and working. So that's a real change. When I signed up to do this very busy job, I thought I was going to have an empty nest. And instead, I have a very full house. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's really hard for me to do a good job, getting out to meet and talk to people with COVID, right? So that makes it a little challenging for me to do my job. And like everybody else, I just miss those interactions with my community. It's a little bit isolating. So I can't wait for everyone to get vaccinated. I got vaccinated already. I was part of the Pfizer vaccine trial, so I got vaccinated about 6 months ago. And I just recently found out that I got the real vaccine. I didn't know. As a trial participant, you don't know if you get the real thing or a placebo. But because the legislature was getting vaccinated, I found out, and I did get the real thing. And so I can't wait for everyone to get vaccinated so that we can move on and get our schools open and our businesses open.
Well, thank you for your time, Representative Marten. But before we close this interview, is there any last message you want to say to your community?
Yes, I just want to say, everybody, please get vaccinated. We want to move beyond COVID and, get our lives back. And also reach out to your representatives or your senators, because that is our job. We're here to help you. And we actually can't get out in the community as much as we would like to at this time. So if you have an issue or a concern, call us.
Thank you for your time, Representative Marten. This is Evie Ferreira, and you're watching Youth Capital Commentary.
Aloha, I'm Joseph Medeiros from Castle High School, and today we're joined by Representative Troy Hashimoto. Thank you so much for being here, Representative.
Hi, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you too. So the first question I have for you today is, could you tell us a bit about the communities you're representing in District 8?
Yeah, so I represent a district on Maui. So I represent the areas from Kahakuloa all the way to Waikapu. So that's Kahakuloa, Waihe'e, Wai'ehu, Wailuku, and Waikapu. And so it's a very unique, diverse area on Maui with a lot of working class individuals, who work in the visitor areas, but a lot of hardworking residents there. And I'm proud to represent them at the Hawaii State Legislature.
What do you plan to get finished by the end of this session?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And the priority, at least for me, is because I am the vice chair of the housing committee, and with COVID-19 facing us, and many of us throughout the community are still hurting, I think one of the areas that we are trying to focus on in the housing committee is how do we really get back to a normal rental market, because right now a lot of people are having a really hard time paying their rent, and they are relying on the federal government for rental assistance. They're relying on the governor's eviction moratorium. And so one of the bills that I've been working on throughout this session is to make sure that we have a process that will transition those who may not be able to have rent payments or are back on rental payments into kind of a normal time, because we don't want these individuals to go homeless. So what we're trying to do is we have this bill that will promote mediation between the landlord and tenant to try and negotiate some type of, common ground on how they can move forward in trying to develop a payment plan if they have back rent, to ensure that they don't have to go to court and go through the eviction process, because that's going to be facing about 14,000 households coming up whenever the eviction moratorium ends. And so that's a serious problem. And I think housing is such an important issue for everyone, because that's fundamental to life. You need a place to live. And so we're trying to push that bill through. It's HB 1376, and we're hoping that will make it to the end of the legislative session and the governor will sign it into law.
Obviously, COVID has affected how people are living. So after COVID goes away, how do you plan to deal with the rent situation?
Right. So the fortunate part is that the federal government has essentially gifted Hawaii through federal relief, through federal stimulus relief, $200 million until December. So it'll be starting to be deployed coming up here in about mid-March to the end. We have until the end of December to use that $200 million statewide. So that hopefully will get us pretty far. So you have to be making 80% of area median income or less. And so that's for a household of one, that's around $67,000 that you should be, or less, that you should be making. So it qualifies for quite a bit of people, and you have to provide some type of hardship. So we're hoping that that will take us through December, and that'll allow a lot of people to get caught up in rent so that they won't be behind when the money runs out. And it'll be, hopefully will bridge us to a place where they'll get back to work by the time all that funds run out. If it doesn't, our hope is that the federal government may be assisting more individuals through additional stimulus to bridge us until the economy can get better. But Hawaii it's been hit very hard because of our tourism-based economy. And so I think our hope is that this federal relief will get us to that point where we're stabilized. And then, of course, our bill that we just discussed will then will then push landlords and tenants to figure out some type of payment plan or some type of concessions to bridge us to the end of COVID. But it's a difficult time, difficult situation, and we know a lot of people are gonna face some difficult times ahead.
So, Representative, I believe you also are working on education. So, what are the main issues coming up on education based during COVID?
Yeah, so I'm a member of both the Higher and Lower Education Committee, and I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing in that committee is how do we balance the state's budget and not have to go into furloughs or teacher cuts to balance our budget. And I think that's on the top of mind of a lot of educators right now, that they don't want to lose their jobs because of the cutbacks of the budget. They want to make sure that they can continue to deliver quality education to students. And so that really is on the top of mind for all of the committee members. And so we've been in intense discussions with the Department of Education. Fortunately, they also have some federal stimulus funds that they received that would be able to be used to really bridge the gap, to allow teachers not to go into furloughs and to make as much as drastic cuts as they were proposing just a few months ago. And so we're trying to get the DOE to redirect those funds directly to the school level, directly to educators. So that's one of our bills to ensure that that will happen. I think there was some fears that the DOE was going to use some of that funds for other operational things like tutors to help those students that, you know, might have fallen behind. But I think the teachers really wanted us to know that the priority should be on keeping our current workforce employed at the same levels, because in the future it will help with teacher retention and teachers not leaving the profession. And so there's big ramifications not only for teachers, but the quality of education that we'll see in Hawaii. So we're really focused on that. I think there's a lot of fluid things happening right now, so we have to stay focused on making sure that the right decisions are made in conjunction with the Board of Education to ensure our educational standards aren't diminished. And so we're really working on that right now.
As you mentioned, teachers had a scare a few months ago about being furloughed and losing pay for while they were off. Do you believe this is still an occurring issue during the future pandemic?
You know, I think we would like to say that it's off the table, but unfortunately, we will just have to wait and see, because at the heart of Hawaii is our economy, and our economy is so heavily tourism-based that unless, you know, we get better and allow tourists to come to Hawaii, we're still going to have a dire financial situation. And so I think it's too soon to say, to really understand how our financial future is going to look. I think the vaccination is a very good step in the right direction, because having safe residents and safe travelers who are vaccinated, who won't get COVID, that's the first step. And so this vaccination rollout is critical to Hawaii's future, because that will then allow us to reopen travel. And so I think once travel starts to reopen, our economy will start to get better. We'll collect more tax revenue, and that will allow us to not have to furlough state employees and help us to balance our budget. So I think it will really depend on how fast we can all get vaccinated, and if we can do that, and if once everyone feels safe and we reopen our economy and we can rebound quickly, because even though we reopen our economy, it doesn't mean that people will start to visit immediately. But if we can get on a stable footing, my hope is that we can avoid those furloughs for good. I hope that the worst is behind us, and I know the federal government will continue to help us. But at some point, we will have to stand on our own 2 feet, and hopefully by the time that occurs, our economy has recovered.
Thank you so much. Those are all the questions I have for you today. And thank you for joining us today, Representative.
Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out and getting interested in your legislature. I think that's a critical thing that you're doing, and to educate your peers.
Thank you so much for joining us, Representative. My name is Joseph Medeiros from Campbell High School, and you're watching Youth Capital Commentary.
Aloha, my name is Gentry Price. I'm from King Intermediate School, and today I'm joined with Representative Belatti. Nice to meet you, Representative.
Thank you, Gentry, for having me on the show.
Thank you. So my first question for you today is, can you describe some of your communities around your area?
Sure. I represent District 24. They're the communities of Makiki, Manoa, parts of Papakolea, Makali, and Pava'a. So really, I represent parts of urban Honolulu, and it's a very, very diverse community. I have folks who live up on the mountaintops all the way down to the areas around the freeway. So a very wide socioeconomic range.
Okay, and then I noticed you're big on education, higher education, and technology, and given on the places that you are representing, that obviously makes sense. Because you're so into the education itself, do you have any plans on, like, not maybe getting the kids back into school, but more rather giving them a better education, because our educational rates are beginning to decline? How do you plan on solving that issue?
So I think it's really important, actually to deal with the immediate. We have to figure out a way to reopen our schools so people can get back into the schools. We need to have in-person learning because we know that that's the most effective. So we're really focused this legislative session on how can we make sure that there's sufficient staffing and resources available for when the schools can reopen during the pandemic. But on top of that, I think just for longer term purposes, we're really focused on how do we make sure that there's access to early learning. So we really want to make sure that at the early stages of learning, people have opportunity, whether it's in kind of the public-private sector or the daycare centers, that they have access to really good learning opportunities. And then just in general, how do we make sure that the schools have the monies and resources that they need at the school level to be able to do all of the things that we know are important? That's going to be something that we're going to have to be looking to in the future. And I think one of the things that we've learned is that in schools, digital access is going to be and continue to be very important. Without it, we couldn't have done learning during the COVID pandemic. And certainly moving forward, we have to make sure that students like yourself have access to all the digital resources that they can get.
And then since you're in charge or representing, such a wide variety of different, not only economical, but also just like, if you take a look at their surroundings, how it's so diverse, how does that kind of affect the different bills you introduce and how you run your session time?
Sure. So, I'm always having to look at different opinions. And I think that's one of the things that makes a good legislator, when you can look at different issues, complex issues from different perspectives. And it's always a real challenge to try to figure out what is going to be the best policy, because with any policy or law, there's always unintended consequences. For me, while I do have a large socioeconomic diversity within my community, I am very sensitive and very concerned about how people who are kind of like in that middle to lower class working levels, or how are they faring during the pandemic? And what we're finding is that before the pandemic, it was a struggle to live here. Cost of living was really high. It's getting worse. And the recession that's probably going to be caused by the pandemic, the unemployment issues, are only making our more vulnerable families even more vulnerable. So I'm very concerned about those people who are really at risk, people who are facing unemployment, food insecurity, wage insecurity. And so those are the kinds of things that I really try to focus on. It's very easy to get lost in like big debates about, kind of sexy things like cannabis or, all kinds of other things. But I think we have to really focus on bread and butter issues. And it's really important for us to do that now during this pandemic.
And then do you have any plans in particular to help those who want to live here but don't exactly might have the means to stay here right now? Do you have any plans for those people?
I think there's continued focus on how do we make sure we are building enough housing so that we have a wide range and especially affordable housing. I'm working closely with members of the housing committee to look at ways that we can also address rent and the kind of rent insecurity people now have. People need a lot of rent assistance now, and there's a lot of that, but we need to make sure that people are also able to negotiate ways in which they can make sure that they can stay in their rental properties. So there's a lot of focus on housing security right now, and those are some of the things. It's a really complex issue, though, because at the end of the day, part of affordable housing is making sure we're just building enough housing, period. And so that's something that we have to keep focused on, and so that's a long-term problem.
And then because this pandemic has affected the entire world, everyone on it, how have you seen the community being affected firsthand when we're on lockdown as such?
I'm very concerned about people's mental health. I think we know that this has exacted a tremendous toll on people, and I can see it in my own family members and my own friends. And I think the sooner we are able to reopen, I think the better it will be for everybody. It will be good. It will be better for our economy. It will be better for public health. It will be better for individuals and their own mental health. But I think it's really important that we figure out a way, and part of that is going to be making sure that we can make sure everyone gets vaccinations. Everyone who wants a vaccine should get a vaccine. And that's one of the things that will help us, one, open up our economy as well as address public health issues and get us so that we can meet and gather again. Because I think that's something we've learned, that meeting and gathering is an important part of being a community.
And then another question, because you have been since you've been in this sort of field of work per se for a long time, how has your experience helped you over these years?
So that's a really good question. And I think, sometimes I think, oh, wow, I've been in this so long. But I think with every new legislative session, we have important problems that we have to tackle. And we know, when I came in, cost of living was an issue. Housing was an issue. It continues to be an issue. I think these are the kinds of issues that take a lot of work over time. Sometimes we can make a really big breakthrough, but sometimes things like the pandemic will just happen, and then all our best laid plans have to be put aside. So I think something that I've learned is that you have to persevere. I'm very impressed by the dedication of my colleagues who I've worked with year after year. And sometimes, politicians don't get a good reputation, right? People don't trust us. But I think from what I've seen, you have really good people here who really care about their communities. That has shown through during this pandemic. And you have people who really who are earnest in trying to figure out solutions to long-standing problems and complex problems. If it was an easy problem, it really would be easy to find and say what the answer is going to be. But these are problems that are complicated. And so I think one of the things that I really learned is that perseverance is really important.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Representative. Is there any other last words you want to say to your community before we leave?
No, except that please continue to support great organizations like Alelo, and to help students like yourself get a step up by doing these kinds of great activities. So thank you, Genshu.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Representative Belatti. My name is Genshu Price from King Intermediate, and this is Youth Capital Commentary.
Hello and aloha, my name is Micah Tutuvanu. I am a current junior at Moanalua High School, and today I'm here with Representative Amy Perruso, who represents District 46. Thank you, Representative Amy Perruso, for taking time out of your day to come here and be interviewed.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to get into our first question, and our first question for today is, tell us a little bit about the communities in your district.
Sure. Wahiawa, Whitmore Village, and Launani Valley are all very different communities. So Wahiawa is makes up the bulk of my district, and I would say that's a very old plantation town. It's a small town, and it's abutted by Whitmore Village to the north, and that is also a plantation village, very agricultural and established around the pineapple plantations. And then Launani Valley on the other side of Wahiawa is a newer community, and it really is a community that lies between Mililani and Wahiawa and is kind of a hidden valley. So very diverse district with different sets of needs for each of those parts, I would say.
My second question for you is, what are your goals for this remaining session, and how would you approach accomplishing your goals for the remaining session?
Thank you for the question. I think that at this point in the session, it's a really challenging question because we have seen already that some bills have not been heard or have not progressed as far as they need to. And I think that my goals remain pretty consistent. I've been working really hard on farm to school issues. I want to make sure that we not only make it so that our young people have fresh, nutritious food on their plates for school lunch, but also that our local farmers are supported and financially buoyed by being able to supply to our schools. So I've been working really hard on that. That's one of my most important goals. I also, as a co-convener of the Keiki Caucus this session, I've made it a priority to really elevate youth voice. So I was very involved with the Civic Education Council and Kids Voting Hawaii. So 14,000 students across the state this year voted, and they voted on ballot issues. So they chose 10 issues, and they prioritized sustainable school lunches, but also other issues like Vote 16. They also talked about the need for more Hawaiian, more place-based, more cultural-based education in the schools. And I think that as we move into this period of the legislative session where we're talking about resolutions and hearing about the needs of the community moving forward, I really want to focus my attention on what the youth have been saying, and to bring the young people into the building to provide testimony and to really shape our agenda, not just for this session, but for the coming decades. So that's really a priority of mine.
I really love what you're doing, specifically the amplification of youth's voices. I think it's really essential. My last question for you today is, for school specifically, you know that a lot of the students are doing online school. What are some solutions to get them back into physical school?
I think that's a really interesting and challenging question because, you know, as a teacher, I recognize the value of that person-to-person interaction, right? And, you know, even you and I talking online, it's not the same as talking with you in person. And I also, as a teacher, recognize how pedagogically challenging it is to make sure students are learning to connect with them and to provide the same kinds of experiences that they would have in a normal classroom so that they can connect with each other. Because for me, education's not about rote memorization and regurgitation. It's about change, like giving young people experiences where they are transformed, right? And that's really hard in an online setting. But I think that the more that teachers use kind of experiential processes, so getting students outside, that's safe, and they can engage in Aloha Aina work, and they can also be doing more interdisciplinary work, right? Because so often our learning in schools is siloed, like here's your math class and here's your science class and here's your social studies class, and they never seem to connect. But I think that if you do interdisciplinary work and you're doing like place-based or culturally based learning, then that's one way to really transition out of this pandemic in a way that creates meaningful experiences for our young people. So if I was still in the classroom, and I hope to go back to the classroom someday, that's what I would be doing.
Thank you, Representative Amy Perruso, for your time. I would love for you to be able to say some remaining words to the audience that are currently watching us.
Sure. I think what I would like to say is, as a new member of the Finance Committee, I think that right now we start on the most difficult work of the session, and that is figuring out how to address the economic crisis while we are still in the midst of a pandemic. And as a teacher, and you know that my highest priority is schools, I think we have to have some vision about how to fund our public schools that is not dependent upon an economy based on tourism. So I think that we really need to look at the lack of balance in our taxation system and how it creates social inequality. And so I think we need to not just worry when we develop our budget about addressing the shortfall, the fiscal shortfall, but also addressing social inequality. We can make this a more just and prosperous place at the same time. But I think that kind of change requires community support. So I really want the community to start thinking about what it would look like to have a more just society, to have less inequality in these islands, and what it would mean for our young people, and how it would make it possible for them to stay here. And you know, it breaks all of our hearts when our young people leave. So I want to keep people like you, I want to keep you here. So, and to make it a better place. So I think we can do that through the budget, because the budget reflects our values.
Thank you, Representative Perruso, for joining us today. My name is Micah Tutuvanu, and you're watching Youth Capital Commentary.